Hi folks, Kevin here. Well, it's January 21st, 2018, and today I wanted to do another episode of Ask Me Anything. And what I'm trying to do is go back now and look through the history when I wasn't able to respond because just being so busy around here to many of the comments and questions. And if I haven't responded to your questions that you've had in the past, please hit me up again. I will try and answer the questions as best as I can do. Some things, if you're asking me very specific things such as calculations for, let's say for a solar system that you're designing or that you want for a certain pump, to pump water on your property, those things I probably won't. It's not my area of expertise. It's I'll give the calculations like I did do with the how to calculate the solar panels for your home or for your business, that video. I'll put a link up there in the description or in the video, I guess. But anyways, I'll get to Lisa Miller. It was probably a month ago that Lisa left a comment with a bit of a question in there. And it reads, your forest is very appealing to me. It's cool and damp and is precisely the opposite of the breathtaking heat and dryness of my central Texas situation. I would love to suppress the weeds and grass with cardboard, but my experience and that of many others in my area is that Bermuda grass, which is everywhere, eats cardboard for lunch. I'm trench composting my kitchen scraps at the moment, digging up the Bermuda by hand, which is not sustainable. Your advice would be much appreciated. So again, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to respond to your comment and quest for some advice. We have similar problems up here. So we have bindweed, we have mint, and we have quackgrass. The problem is that it isn't just the plant and the roots with these perennial plants. It's those rhizomes, those lateral white finger-like projections that extend out from what I'm going to call the root crown and work their way out laterally and can go for extensive periods out there. Oh, let me stop with my explanation of these noxious weeds. First, I want to commend you for doing your dealing with your kitchen scraps in that way. I think that doing a trench method, if you're doing it right along your garden beds, I think that's awesome because that way you're continuously feeding the soil, you're feeding the microorganisms in the area, and the worms are actually tracking right through there. And I'm talking about the macroscopic worms, not the microscopic worms. We've done something similar in the past but our property got so, our gardening experiences got so large, but perforated 5-gallon buckets and doing that in permanent raised beds really helped to build the soil and meet the nutritional requirements for the microbes that were in the garden beds. So I think this system works very well. Building soil is a big part of even the answer that I'm going to give or some thoughts. But so these noxious weeds that have these and some weeds have tremendously long taproots, roots that extend down 4 or 5 feet, and we have some of those plants here as well. And if you snap them off and that part of that tip is still there, it'll be back the next year or the year after. So I guess I have a couple of questions more about the layers of your soil. When we look at the horizon, the soil horizon, or we look at the layers of the soil, often we're talking about, when we're talking about soil, is it predominantly sand, silt, or clay? And I think in Texas, there's, from my experiences being down there, lots and lots of sand. Some areas, the bedrock is right near the surface. There's limestone down there, depending on where you're located. Some areas extremely rocky. So it really depends on what you've got. And one thing the other questions I have are, how quickly do you have to move on this? Is this something that you can take some time? How large of an area do you wish to control? And I guess the other question I have is, do you also want to go chemical free? We do no chemicals here, with the exception of I will use a vinegar and a little bit of soap and predominantly water mixture for killing off some of the noxious weeds that in the area, but that takes repeated doses at the time, and that's really not good for something like what you're talking about with the Bermuda grass. Yes, it'll look like you wiped it out, but you wouldn't have done that. So those are the few questions: how large of an area, what your soil type is actually like, and how quickly can you set aside an area and do, say, half of the area for a couple of years, leave it where you're not doing active gardening, and then going back and doing it over time. And the other thing is, what resources do you have in your area? If you've seen some of the videos that we have here, you know I do lots and lots of composting, and I've been really fortunate to be able to get some of the tree services to provide me with lots and lots of wood chips. Now, I don't get much delivered here. I have one tree service that comes regularly if he's in this area, and he'll drop me, you know, a few loads a week during his busier times. But I've actually gone out and gotten mountains of wood chips, and that's really made a big difference. So we're on a gravel bed area here, so building up soil above the ground really makes a big difference, especially if it's easily friable. You can dive your arm right down into the soil, right up to your elbow, without hitting rocks and having difficulty. So a couple of key things. If you've got that, once you've got it, and you probably don't have this yet, I'm imagining in your part of the country that you don't have this beautiful, deep, rich soil. But once you've gotten that, managing these noxious weeds is so much easier, because you can actually tease, you can follow those rhizomes out when it starts to creep into the area. But let's assume you don't have that situation. One of the things that I'll be doing, and I'll show this when I have the time, I'd like to order a couple of large tarps. Now, if you've seen some of my videos, you'll see that I've used Harbor Freight tarps. These are not really UV treated. They're silver or grayish in color, and they're not that great. So that isn't the best tarps to use. The UV treated ones, and it's Farmer's Friend. I think it's farmersfriend.com, and I'll put a link in the description and to make sure that it is Farmer's Friend. They do sell silage tarps. You want them UV treated so that they're going to last a while, and that's one of the ways that we can potentially kill off the weeds. So there's a few things that can be done, and what I would recommend using is doing two different types of tarps, if you will. One is the UV treated tarp, and that'll do the occultation, which is really decreasing the sunlight exposure, and those rhizomes are going to shoot up new plants, but if they aren't getting the photosynthesis, gradually those rhizomes are going to get depleted of their vital forces. They're just going to deplete all their nutrients, and it won't be able to come back. Similar to what you would be doing with sheet mulch, but the sheet mulching, well, it's not as long lasting. Our cardboard breaks down so darn quickly here that quackgrass and bindweed, it like you say, eats it up and spits it up. Well, consumes it. It breaks it down really quickly. So these UV treated silage tarps, I think, work very well as far as decreasing the sunlight exposure. Now, you're in an area where I'm assuming you've got lots of sunlight exposure as well. So another tool you can use is solarization. and I think I made a video on weed management in the past. I'll look and see if I did do that. It would be one of those permaculture type series ones that I've done in the past. And I think the topic is weed management. Solarization is where you would pick up some polyethylene, some clear plastic, and you'd water the area. You'd put the clear plastic down, and an example would be, let's say there's someone who has polytunnels, or what some people would consider greenhouses, but they're not heated. They're just clear plastic that goes over a greenhouse, and that'll allow the sunlight to come in. And if you've ever been inside of a greenhouse during the summertime, if they're not open, you can fry an egg inside of one of those areas. So that's going to, by having that sunlight coming in and the moisture in the soil, those plants are going to start to grow up, but you're going to burn them. It's going to it's not quite as effective as burning them, but over time that will decrease their nutrient reserves in those rhizomes. And it may take 2 years of using the solarization and the occultation with the light excluding black tarp, but that also will create a lot of heat. So it's really using two tarps in a sense. One is a plastic, like a greenhouse cover, that would allow the sunlight exposure, moisture the soil first and all. Now, if you have, I hope that made sense. If there's further questions about that part, please ask me again. And I'll be, possibly this summer, if I get enough wood chips, I'll be doing an area where perennial beds, where more blueberry plants will be going in, and more blackberries, and future strawberry beds as well. That'll go up in a pick your own gardens up front, closer to the main road where the blackberry plants are, if you've seen in some of the other videos. So that's an area where there's lots of quackgrass, and there's some bindweed as well. So I'm going to want to go ahead and prep that area beforehand, before I start putting in transplants in the area, because I don't want to deal with it once I've got the plants in those beds. So I hope that makes sense. Now back to the other topic is, if you can reach out to community people and getting materials to build more soil, depending on the volume of area, the square footage of area that you want to get control over and stop these weeds from coming. One of the things you can do is create really deep beds. And by creating those really, really deep beds, that can make all the difference in the world. Now, if you only have, all right, so I'm sorry, I apologize. I was going to another aspect. But if you really want to create these deep beds, and that means you can't have buildings that are at ground level and have these beds right up next to it, you're going to be getting other issues. So in your part of the country, you might be dealing with cockroaches or having ant problems, where you'd worry about having wood chips right up next to the building. But looking to the municipalities or the tree services and finding out what materials there are and seeing, is this something that I can do on my property? Now, let's say your ground floor in your house, if you're living in a small lot, and you have a house that's on a ground floor and it's on a slab, and you're worried about there being building up the soil too deep next to the house, you can do some raised beds, sort of like our handicap garden beds that we've done with blocks, but you can do it with rocks, you can do it with boards, you can do it with other containers as well. And if you're going to build them on the ground so that there's good drainage, you can actually put down a couple of layers of some of the DeWitt weed mat, and it's in some of the gardening videos, and I put links to it in the descriptions of those videos in the past. And you can actually put that below the beds and actually extend it out. Let's say if I were building beds that were, say, like 2.5 feet tall that you wanted to put all your beds in, to plant your garden vegetables in, I would make, and let's say it's a 4-foot wide bed by whatever length you want to make it. And if I didn't want to put concrete or other materials down there, and I was worried about the Bermuda grass working its way in from the sides or any other noxious weed and working its way up through the bed, or if you're worried about even small mammals getting into it, you put hardware cloth down. But using the weed mat down before you even build the beds, laying that on the ground and extending it out a few feet from the bed, let's say 3 or 4 feet from where the where the raised bed will be, I would extend that out laterally 3 to 4 feet to make it more difficult for those noxious weeds to make it up underneath the wall of the raised beds that you'd grow the vegetables in. So that's really small scale, like a single family garden. You can see our gardens are pretty extensive because we grow lots and lots of fruits and vegetables here. Now I forgot what the other aspect was. So it's possible if you're willing to put in raised beds to create soil beds that are much easier to control those sorts of weeds in once they're there. I like trying to get materials that are actually going to waste. And if you don't have wood chips available in the area, I would let contractors know who are in the area, like many of and farmers know. So if there's non-treated boards and materials, I'm actually building slow soil from those materials. You'd have to, make sure that the noxious weeds aren't going to get into these areas where you're going to build the soil. But over time, by keeping them moist and if you've got fungi issues, if you don't have enough fungi there, one of the things you can do is create more of a shade enclosure for those areas, keep them moist, and doing some slow soil building, and I've described that in previous videos as well. So even woody materials can be broken down, similar to what I've done in some of our hugelkultur mounds. And I'm going to try and create a video about what we're doing with one of the fence lines. So I've got one fence that surrounds one of my neighbors, does 2 sides, so it's 535 feet in total length, 100 foot in one direction and 435 feet in another direction. And I've dug down and put in hugelkultur pits away from the fence, and then I've created hugelkultur mounds up against the fence. And then in another area I'm building a very large, where the slope goes away from I'm following the slope down the property, interrupting that slope and building up much more soil there. And it's taking years because I'm building up 6 foot deep on top of a hugelkultur bed that goes down 10 feet. So it's really 16 feet of lots of woody material, and that requires lots of material because that compresses and compacts down over time. So these woody materials do break down and turn into beautiful soil. And I'll try to show this spring just how well the material is breaking down from these last couple of years of doing the woody beds. And you can actually, the interesting thing is that over the last couple of years I've been filming these areas. I hadn't been focusing on them, but you'll see in the videos the same areas where trees are growing, and it was 6 foot more shallow of soil, and those trees are gone now, and those are areas where I'm going to be putting in the season extending hoop houses, which is like greenhouses, just that they won't be heated. I'll grow the plants during the fall months. They'll stop growing during the winter months, and I'll be able to harvest them all winter long. So I hope that makes sense. I know I've gone a little bit out on a tangent with all this, but I've mentioned a couple of tools that potentially can help you get control over these things. So I think this is going to be long enough of a video, so I won't respond to any more comments on this particular video. But Lisa, let me know if this is of value. Please share it with your friends. I'm trying to build the YouTube community, especially since there's been a recent demonetization. I need to get some more subscribers, so if you have friends and all that are interested in any of the topics that we've been talking about, please share it with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. And I am so thankful for you being patient for me to get back to this. We get a little overwhelmed here on this site trying to get everything caught up. Well, thanks so much for watching. I so much appreciate it. Please give us a thumbs up if you thought this video was of value and share it with your friends. Take care, folks. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.